Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. I'm your host, Shane McInnes, teacher, reader of weird books. How's it going, Superb? Dude who knows random trivia. Great to have around the bar at that time of the year. Maybe not so much during COVID world. I don't know if anybody's doing bar trivia anymore. Probably shouldn't go do it anyway, even if it's happening. I hope everyone is having a great one. I will admit that today has been kind of tough. I've been a little down. Some of the stuff that I've been studying is pretty emotionally heavy. I've been studying a lot about the sociological and ideological stuff that deals in and around slavery and the Civil War, and the stuff that I'm learning about has sort of overlapped very heavily with the stuff that's going on right now in the world, and it's been a little heavy. It's always tough to recognize that we've had problems for so long and not been able to address them as a people, especially when some of these problems are as basic as understanding that the Civil War was fought because half the country wanted slaves. The state that I live in, Mississippi, is having another gigantic argument right now about whether or not to change our state flag. The state flag of Mississippi is currently the only flag left in the nation that shows the Confederate battle flag on it. And I'm getting lots of lost causes stuff coming out about people talking a lot about heritage and a lot about valiance and courage and bravery. And I won't get into all that stuff because it's not what we're here for. You all aren't here to listen to me kind of grouse about the problems of society. We're here to make bad puns and learn about history. And I just realized that I have not changed the banner tonight, so let me fix that because we need to update that. So that it recognizes what we are doing. Okay, there we are. Adventures in History, Episode 13. Inauspicious number, I guess, if you're triskaidekaphobic, which is the fear of the number 13, which ironically has 13 letters. I wonder if somebody did that on purpose. The people that made up the English language are rude and mean. It's the same people that probably spelled lisp, L-I-S-P. Lots of rude people. You're dodecaphobic? I've got a couple of weird phobias. I don't know what the actual word for it is. I'm sure there is one. Fear of rolling the initiative. Oh, man. KP, you're a goof. I have a weird fear of needles. Came from being younger and having to go through allergy testing where they hold you down and stab you a lot with needles to see what you're allergic to. Don't care for that stuff very much. Anyway, so we are here in Adventures of History, which is a show that I promise you is not as dour as the last couple of minutes have been. Usually we have lots of fun and goof off, and we'll get there. I just need to get over the hump a little bit. We talk about history in a way that is approachable, in a not classroom style. I am not here to lecture anybody. I'm here to have a guided conversation where we talk about stuff. And you can ask questions and make goofy comments or sarcastic comments or tell dad jokes or make puns of various levels of instance or in quality. So, yeah, KP is a legit arachnophobic. I have witnessed that firsthand. Having a good time. Right. Doing the bull dance. Feeling the flow. It's a Happy Gilmore quote there for you. So If you would like to, you can send me emails. There's my email address, mckinnistravels@gmail.com.
I'm Spartacus!
No,
I'm Spartacus.
you're not Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I am Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I am Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
But thank you, Jim Bob. I'm Dirty Dan. Oh, what a goof. Yeah, thanks for the sub. I appreciate that a lot. Really, really do. So for those of you that would like to follow in Jim Bob's example, if you have Amazon Prime, you can link Amazon Prime with Twitch, and it gives you a free subscription that you can do whatever you want to. Of course, I'm a little biased and would like for you to give it to me, but you can give it to whomever you would like. No pressure. Subscription, by the way, for those of you that might not be familiar, I feel like everybody might be, but I'll say this just for the heck of it. It's just a monetary pledge that gives me some money, and it really does account to actual dollars. And that goes into a pot, and Amazon will actually send me a check, and I will be 100% clear about what I spend all of that money on. Hey, Afid, how's it going? Currently, the money that is amassing is going to go towards buying me a new and much better webcam than the one that I have now that's embedded in my my laptop, so that I don't have to constantly look slightly to the left. I have another screen for those of you that can't see. It's over this way. So if you see me, my eyes cutting over here, this is where my chat is, and also where my streaming platform material is. I have my kind of notes and my pictures here in front of me so that I can operate those and look at you at the same time. But if you see me looking slightly to the left, it's not like one of those weird family photos where something happened off frame slightly to the left and everybody's just like... I know you've seen those photos. Don't act like you haven't. But thank you, Jim Bob, seriously. And thanks to all my subscribers, Twitch Prime and otherwise. Oh yeah, sushi. Sushi's great. My favorite food, sushi, by the way. So you can send me an email at McKinnis Travels with anything that you'd like. And you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at SomeHistoryGuy to see a semi-daily dose of history stuff. I've been a little bit behind on that lately. I've been really, really busy this week. Really, really busy. I let some stuff sneak up on me last week and took a little bit of a breather and actually went and did some history adventure stuff, and it has bitten me in the hiney, and I'm a little bit behind. So all is well, though. But welcome. Hope you're doing all right. As always, the title of our stream is some form of pop cultural pun. Tonight, the title is Frankie Say Wanax. I promised that I would make it a little bit more modern. The last few have been very, very old songs that I've referenced lyrics to. Didn't always catch on. I hope people get this one. I feel like this one's a little bit more modern. I hope you get that. If you get that, let me know. I need like an official... So I need somebody to volunteer to be my pun approver. Occasionally I'll throw these by KP or Mac in a lab coat and say, do you get this? And get their opinions. I don't know. Fun times. For those of you that have not modern compared to the history you covered, this is modern. Yeah, okay. Modern meaning within my lifetime, right? Isn't that what Kyle's for? Oh, I could bounce all these off. Well, I mean, I have bounced one of them off of Kyle before. No, that's not fish. It's the song Relax by... Oh, really? There was even a t-shirt that says Frankie Say Relax, and it was huge. I think David Schwimmer wore one on Friends one time. I invented the piano key necktie. That's another reference from an older movie that I don't know if anybody else got. But welcome, Kyle, and welcome, Daria. Let's see if I can get my shutout to work. I don't know what's been going on. with my shout out. Is it going to work? It doesn't look like it's going to work. Everyone go check out target name. Friggin' Streamlabs. See if Kyle can make it work. I don't know if Kyle has permission to make it work. Should it be at? Let's see if that works. You may like the proper permissions. Yeah, fiddlesticks. Okay, so I'm going to have to go fix Streamlabs again. It goofed up last time, and I don't know what's going on with it. Alas. Daria Axanova, great artist, friend of the channel, lets me get in her chat room and just kind of blob out random history and sociology and philosophical stuff and mythology. Very much appreciated platform if you are interested. She does amazing art, very detailed ink and ink washed paper that's cut out and suspended in layers to make shadow boxes that give you three-dimensional art. Really cool stuff. Give her a follow if you aren't already. I say so, and you must do it now. Anyway, the word Wanax that we're talking about up here is a title for Mycenaean king, and we'll get there in just a bit. Because one of the topics that we're going to talk about is tonight is Mycenaean. We're going to be covering the last of the Bronze Age cultures that we'll talk about before we collapse the Bronze Age. We've talked about Bronze Age India. We've talked about Bronze Age China. We've talked about Bronze Age Mesopotamia. We've talked about Bronze Age Turkey and Syria. And tonight we're going to be talking about Bronze Age Egypt and Greece. So all of these big cultures are existing at the same time. And the world is kind of putting along at a pretty good clip. And then next week we'll crash everything and ruin it all. Because, nothing good lasts. I guess that's kind of the story of history. But it also means that we need to cherish what we have. And I'm not going to get super philosophical and make everybody give each other a group hug or anything like that. So let's just kind of talk about Egypt a little bit. You can see here on our Google Earth map that I have zoomed in on Egypt. Boom, right here. Nile River, Red Sea, Mediterranean Sea. This is ancient Egypt. Well, I guess it's modern Egypt now, but in the ancient world, this would have been where ancient Egypt was. You miss hugs. Yeah, I understand. I haven't given my parents a hug in like months. Philosophical group hug. Never seen that before. Yeah, calm heart. We stand around in a circle and think about hugging each other. And then we debate who has the best hugging method. And welcome, Calm Heart. Welcome to the channel. So we're talking about ancient Egypt, and in the Bronze Age, the height of the Bronze Age, around the time that we're talking about, we're going to be talking about something called the New Kingdom. And Egypt is divided into several different periods of time. And as you know, I can't talk and type at the same time. You haven't seen anyone you know in person since 14th. It's been a bad time to move across the country. Yeah, man, I feel that. Superb. I will send you a high five. I don't want to invade your personal space and send you a hug. But here, you just put your hand up to the... Well, I hope you feel at home here, and I hope that we can at least give you some level of camaraderie in the dark times. I know it gets tough being isolated. That does stink. So, as I was saying about Egyptian history, it's divided into two different types of period. You have kingdoms, and then you have what we call intermediate periods. And the intermediate periods are exactly what they sound like. They come in between the kingdoms, and there are three separate ones: the first, the second, and the third intermediate period. Oh man, aren't we so unique in naming all of these things? So you have what's called the Old Kingdom, and then you have the first intermediate period. And then you have the Middle Kingdom, and then you have the second intermediate period. See where we're going here? You did put your hand up to the screen. It's been rough. Found out today that my mom is being pulled from her office position to work on the floor treating COVID patients. Oh, yeah, man. Well, cosmic vibes towards your mom. Hope everything stays well. I know that's a scary thing. I've got lots of friends and family that are in the healthcare field, and I know how rough that can be. Not just on the person doing the work, but the family around the work too. Oh, no, man. No. Don't ever feel bad about talking. We are all people. One of the central core concepts of this stream is that human beings are people. We all need certain things. We all want certain things, and we can all help each other out, right? If you need to unload, you unload, bud. You go for it. Just gave the puppy a little bit of a head scratch, just as this solidarity, interspecies high five. There we go. All right, so New Kingdom. The New Kingdom of Egypt is going to be the height of Egyptian power. Now, you might think, well, it wasn't the height of Egyptian power back when they were building all those giant pyramids. Well, you would think so. That's actually way back in the Old Kingdom. Those pyramids are super crazy old. But the actual height of Egypt is under this New Kingdom. And it is started by a guy named Ahmose. And Ahmose is going to rule about 1550, from about 1550 BC to about 1525 BC. And he's going to be instrumental in ending the Second Intermediate Period. Ahmose is, he's a fighter, he's a warrior, and he's going to kick out some invaders from the outside that had moved into Egypt and sort of caused a lot of trouble. These people are called the Hyksos, but we don't really want to necessarily go all the way into those guys. But Ahmose is going to be able to put his dynasty in charge. His dynasty is the 18th dynasty. These are the ruling families of Egypt, so his is the 18th ruling family. And he's going to start the New Kingdom. So this kingdom is going to be, again, it's unified under Egyptian control. It's going to be very strong, very central. And the great thing about Egypt is that we have super cool pieces of art, and we can just about show a picture of every single major leader of Egypt from this period because they were so powerful. They had lots of pieces of art designed, they built a whole bunch of stuff, and they left behind an awful lot of really, really cool stuff. More powerful when you have the showstopper architecture and you're done paying for them. Yeah, really. Right. Well, the great thing about New Kingdom Egypt is they're going to be able to take advantage of a lot of the other big Bronze Age empires, and they're going to be richer than Egypt had ever been before. You just pray you live enough to die after your fancy tomb? Right. Ahmose is the cousin of a beet farmer on white. Oh, man, that's great. That is great. I don't know if they had beets in ancient Egypt. I don't know if those are a New World crop or an Old World. I guess they would have to be Old World. Now I'm going to have to look up if they had beets in Egypt. What I'm hearing is, to be powerful, you must collect art. I don't know if that makes you powerful by itself, but I think it is definitely a side effect of being powerful. To collect art shows your power, perhaps. So this is Ahmose, by the way. Just go with it. Okay, I'll just go with it. I'm point taken. Yes, lots of art is power. There we go. So, what is this guy going to do? Well, again, he sets up the 18th dynasty. He beats up a whole bunch of people, pushes them out of Egypt, but he's also going to start expanding Egypt. And the 18th dynasty is going to be remarkable for its expansion. Right? So, traditionally speaking, our Egyptian kingdoms are mostly going to be kind of within this region right in here, just right along the borders of the Nile Delta. But one thing that Ahmose is going to do is start looking at expanding, especially down into this northern, well, it's not northern, it's technically southern, but upriver, because remember the Nile flows from south to north. So upriver there is another kingdom called Kush, spelled Kush. This has nothing to do with what you might be thinking right now if you're thinking about weed. But the Kingdom of Kush is up here. It's in modern-day Sudan. And this was a fairly large, sizable kingdom as well. They had actually copied quite a bit of Egyptian architecture. A lot of their kings had built smaller pyramids and buried their dead in it. And Nubia and Kush down here in this region are going to be ripe for the picking, because the Egyptians are going to come out of this very powerful and very quickly. And Ahmose is going to start raiding down into Kush to bring more money into Egypt. While it sucks that she follows precautions, should be okay. Definitely sucks. Yes. Where was the Kush ball invented? I don't actually know that. I'm sure that there's some history of that. Kush ball, probably some guy at Nerf when he was playing around with spare bits of rubber. No, not that kind of Nubian. Oh, man. Oh, Watto. Anyway, so Ahmose is going to start this outward-looking kind of tactic of Egypt. And his son, Tutmos I, is going to continue this. Tutmos I is going to not only attack Kush, but also go down into that region and take big parts of it over. So literally expanding the territory under Egyptian control down into this further southern region. Tutmos I is also going to send big raiding parties into this region, the Levant region. Here, let me turn off the borders. This region here, which is called Levant, Levant, and then even as far away as Mesopotamia. So we've already talked about a little bit of this when we've talked about some Hittite and Mitanni battles, and we've talked about Egypt fighting both the Hittites and the Mitanni, and also getting involved in some Assyrian kind of stuff. So this is the period of time that we're talking about. So one of the notable things that Tutmos I is going to do is bring all of those people in this sort of Levantine region into a larger Egyptian empire as well. So Egypt is going to expand south and north, and it's going to just keep pushing their boundaries. And as it expands, it's getting access to more trade, more goods, and more power, and more art. And incorporating all of these things into a larger sort of super Egyptian world. Hey, would you stop licking your legs? That's bad for you. Thank you. So, this brings us to Tutmos II. Tutmos II takes over about 1493 and rules until about 1479. And what's interesting about Tutmos II is that he's married to his half-sister. And this is something that actually happens quite a bit. Oh, the puppy has actually been summoned. Kaylee, come here. Come here. There she is. She's itchy. She has allergies, much like I do. You want to give me sugars? Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, thank you. You want to look right here? There we go. There's all you're getting. Anyway, I was saying she has allergies, and we have medicine for her, but we don't. And now the puppy is leaving. We don't always give her the medicine because, number one, it's kind of expensive, and number two, it's just not good for pups to be on medication like all the time. So we kind of have to judge, is she being itchy enough to get medicine, or is she just being a puppy and licking herself, right? So Kush was created in 1987 by Scott Stillinger, who was so confident that he quit his job to make them full-time. Well, I hope that worked out for Mr. Stillinger. No, it's not Benadryl. It's called Apoquil. Apoquil. It's a dog medicine. It's similar to Benadryl, but it doesn't have all of the sleepy side effects. So that's good because she's sleepy enough as it is. Doesn't need to spend any more time on the bed. All right. So Tutmos II is married to his half-sister, which is a pretty common thing during this period of time. We've already talked about some some Hittite rulers kind of marrying their sisters, and this is not an uncommon thing in the ancient world, especially if you're in the ruling family. Keeping it in the family is kind of a thing. This is not even going to be the most frequent time that you're going to see incest like this in Egypt. Once the Greeks take over in what we call the Ptolemaic era, it becomes a very, very common thing for generations and generations where brother and sister marry each other. But the problem with Thutmose II is that his sister, who is also his wife, is a very intelligent and very capable woman, and her name is Hatshepsut. And it's pretty clear that even kind of right off of the bat from Thutmose II's reign that Hatshepsut is playing a big role in the country. Not only being big in like the decision-making process, but also coming up with sort of initiatives of her own and reforms of her own and building projects of her own. They're making $30 million a year. Yeah, okay. I think that's okay. Yeah. And that company was bought out by Hasbro. So there we go. Yeah, okay. Good for Scott. So Hatshepsut is actually going to end up ruling. Thutmose II dies kind of suddenly for a very young man. And Hatshepsut is going to take over the throne by herself. And she's not the first ruling pharaoh, and she won't be the last ruling female pharaoh, but she's definitely the most successful and probably the most well-known. Thank you, KP, for the Kush history stream. Maybe this audition will get you landed with a job with the Toys That Made Us on Netflix. They'll go, that guy does good research on the fly. Give him a job. I haven't actually seen any of that show. People keep telling me that I need to watch it. So let's look at a picture of Hatshepsut, because it's actually quite interesting to take a gander at this lady. That's Hatshepsut. And you go, okay, well, that looks like a dude. That's because she dressed like a dude. Especially with this big beard thing here. In Egypt, growing a beard was a sign of political dominance and masculinity. So she would wear a fake beard because she wanted everybody to know she wasn't playing around. Girls with beards, very, very much so. This is Hatshepsut. She is one of the most prolific builders of the entire New Kingdom. She builds all sorts of really big, really elaborate tombs for both herself and her family. She renovates tons of temples that had sort of been damaged or left in disuse after the Second Intermediate period. And she's going to be pretty well loved by the people. The dwarven women. You can't tell because it's the beards, right? The bearded lady that can have you executed for gawking. Yes. Was it an actual beard or a glued-on squirrel tail? I believe it, and this is me kind of thinking off the top of my head, and I'm not 100% certain, so feel free to fact check me on this. But I believe it was a horsehair beard, and she secured it with wax. I believe so. I will be honest and say that I haven't read anything specifically about the beard for quite some time. But I don't think it was a glued-on squirrel tail, because I don't think squirrels are very common in Egypt. Yeah, like I think that's a European mammal. They might have some squirrels in that area. I don't know. There are not a lot of trees in Egypt, that's for certain. Maybe some ground squirrels. I know that they have groundhogs, and I know that they have like ground varmints like that. Maybe it's a crocodile. No, I know it's not a crocodile tail. You weren't really supposed to mess with crocodiles. They were the protectors of the Nile and the ambassadors of the god that protected the Nile. Also, it's just good common sense not to go mess with alligators, crocodiles, especially the ones in the Nile, because those things are huge and will eat you. Okay, so we've talked about Hatshepsut already a little bit in the stream in a past episode when we were talking about Egypt. For those of you that might want to go back and check that out, that was our discussion about the evolution of religion. We used Egypt sort of as a typecast example of how religion and politics became intertwined. So Hatshepsut is a very capable ruler, very competent ruler. She's going to build a whole bunch of stuff. She's going to really start expanding the trade networks of Egypt. And then her son gets old enough to rule. And if you're her adult age son, do you really want mom running the country when you could be running the country? And the answer is probably no. Her son is a guy named Thutmose III. And for a little while, there was a pretty good working theory that he had something to do with her demise. But because of DNA evidence on a lot of royal mummies in Egypt, it is believed that archaeologists have located the mummy of Hatshepsut, and they're fairly confident. I don't know if it's 100%, but they're in the high percentiles of the 85-90% range confident that the mummy that they believe is Hatshepsut is actually her. And if that's the case, the mummy shows some pretty advanced signs of cancer, especially bone cancer. So the thought that Thutmose had his mom whacked at a young age to be able to assume the throne as a male has really fallen out of favor. I don't know if it's completely something that we can discard because, again, we're not certain that the mummy that we have is actually Hatshepsut, but it's pretty well believed, and a lot of people are working good theories around it. So this is another way, by the way, that DNA has really helped us out. So Hatshepsut dies, and Thutmose III takes over. He used polonium. Yeah, I don't think that they have like Russian spy level slow killing people like the Russian KGB did, but yes, hedgehogs are definitely an Egyptian thing. I love the polonium concept, though, that over time it just slowly took her out. Oh man, I don't think it was polonium, but we can't be 100% sure. So calm heart if you want to roll with that theory. I'm sure you can find somebody to publish that idea. Somebody will publish just about anything today. All right, so let's look at Thutmose. I've got a good old image of Thutmose. Now, what's kind of fun about Thutmose is that when he takes over, he's got a lot to prove. Because not only does he have to live up to his family's sort of legacy of rebuilding the new kingdom and establishing the 18th dynasty, he's also got to be cooler than his mom. Which I'm saying, that's a bad thing. I think it's perfectly fine for women to be heads of state. I think there have been ample numbers of women that are heads of state that have done quite well. But if you are a young male pharaoh and you just had to fill in for your mom, who was very well liked by the people, brought a lot of money into Egypt, built a whole bunch of cool stuff, was a very successful ruler overall, well, now you gotta step up your game. You gotta come with the A squad. And Thutmose III does exactly that. Because this guy is... Oh my gosh, I was just thinking of ways that I would make a long beard, and we have squirrels everywhere here. I guess a raccoon tail would have worked. You'll get the belly gun. Oh man, that cute little puppy, by the way, that everybody loves, has actually figured out how to consistently catch squirrels in our backyard. And she, to date, has captured and killed, I think, 4 or maybe 5 squirrels. And to be honest, both Brittany and myself thought she was kind of too dumb to do that, because she's a very sweet puppy, but she has very little what we would call common sense. And we never thought that she would actually be able to catch a squirrel, but she's captured several now. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, so who is Thutmose III and what does he do and why do we care? Well, all right, well, Thutmose III is probably the most powerful pharaoh that ever lived. He not only raided Kush and the Levant region, he conquered them outright and brought them completely into his kingdom, not just as client kings or vassals. Literally, he directly ruled them. He sent governors to govern their cities, all the way as far up until what we would call the borders of, at that time, what was Mitanni. So there are cities all along this coastline here, cities like Gad, which is mentioned in the Bible as the home of the Goliath giant guy that fought with David, the city of Tyre, the city of Ugarit, the city of Alalak. All of these cities are in this little strip right here. And these are very, very populous cities that have lots of money and lots of trade access. And Thutmose III is going to extend the border of Egypt all the way up into right about here. So all of this territory is going to come under his reign. He's also going to expand out in this direction toward what is today the countries of Libya, Libya and Tunisia over here. He's also going to expand southward and bring lots of this region even further down than either his grandfather or great-grandfather did. Thutmose is a really, really powerful king and really, really expands the borders. And there's something to be said. Like, is he doing this stuff because he had the power and the money to do it? Or is he doing it because he's got a chip on his shoulder because he wanted to be the guy? You know, he wanted to be the man. He wanted to show everybody he was better than his mom. And I don't think we can discount either of those completely. Egypt was in a really good position at that time. It was incredibly rich. It was bringing in a lot of trade, moving a lot of people around, and there was a lot of just kind of positive energy, and they had a lot of momentum. So I think he was in the right place at the right time, but I also think that he was driven by kind of outliving the shadow of his predecessors. And one of the great things about Thutmose III and the world that he lived in is that during this time we are going to fully get to that height of the Bronze Age. Thutmose III is going to reign from about 1473 to about 1458. And at that time, this is when all of these big empires are around. The Egyptians have a big empire, the Hittites, the Mitanni, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and all of these rulers are exchanging letters with each other, calling each other brother, and sending each other presents. We'll talk about that a lot more next week, this sort of club of great powers, as historians refer to them. And we also have a lot of writing from Thutmose's time, treaties, correspondence that he had with his governors. So we know actually quite a bit about even kind of the day-to-day operation of a lot of the cities in his world. And a lot of this came because of the prosperity. Everybody was making money, everybody was peaceful, everybody was sort of in a balancing act with all of the other big powers, and that created a world where skill and trade flourished. And the height of the Bronze Age was a really, really cool time to be. Now, we've talked a little bit about Thutmose's successor already. We'll mention him because he'll come up quite a bit in our next discussion. Akhenaten, this is that weird guy that decided that he was going to sort of shift everything in the Egyptian world away from being a very widely worshipped polytheistic cult to a polytheistic cult that really only cared about one god, and that was the sun disk Aten, the last element of his name. This is actually Akhenaten right here, one of the few statues that we have left of this guy. because everybody hated his guts, and they tried to basically wipe him off the face of the earth. He builds a big new capital city. He moves a lot of his places out there. We've actually discovered this location. It's at a modern-day dig site called Tel Amarna. There's a lot of discussion about Akhenaten's appearance. Like, if you just look at him and look at his dad. All right, so this is Tutmos III again, so this is his dad. Hatshepsut here would have been his mom. Now, of course, these are all stylized, right? So you're not going to get an exact likeness, but this woman here looks a lot like this guy here. But this guy, he's got a lot of different features. His face is a lot more narrow. He's got a much more pronounced chin. He's got much more full lips. His eyes are more narrow. This is part of a larger statue. Usually when you saw a pharaoh, all of the pharaohs were buff, right? Like really strong looking guys. Like this dude's, right, like so all these muscles and things. Akhenaten was portrayed with kind of a sagging belly and kind of floppy little arms. So there's a lot of discussion about, was this guy like birth deformed, or was he just part of some new wave art style of realistic depiction of pharaohs that died with him because he was a wacko? It could have been a beer gut. The Egyptians were actually really, really big on beer. There is a lot of evidence that the people that built a lot of the big sort of superstructures in Egypt were paid with beer because, number one, it was easier to store than bread because it lasted longer. Number two, it's got lots of calories in it. Now, this was not what you would call today, like this wasn't even to the level of Pabst Blue Ribbon. And by the way, I don't know anything about beer. All the stuff that I know about beer, I know from other people. Oh, dude, he didn't skip just leg day. He skipped like all the days. So the beer back then was like chunky and unfiltered. And it didn't have a lot of carbonation. So it was only a little bit fizzy and it was chunky. So it was more like drinking oatmeal that you made with carbonated water out of a little seltzer bottle. Beer porridge. Yeah, it was kind of like beer porridge, exactly. Beer porridge, the oatmeal that gets you high. Anyway, so this is Akhenaten. He's a funky looking guy. Beer drunk by reform scholars. Yeah, exactly. The people that are bringing it back, like really, really bringing it back. Akhenaten is very important to the larger Bronze Age world because the capital city that he built was out in the middle of the desert, and when he died, it was completely abandoned, and it honestly looked like everybody just dropped all their stuff and left, which is amazing for archaeologists because that means we have all of this really, really cool stuff in an almost pristine city that's been left alone for a very long period of time that we dug up. Tel Amarna, awesome stuff. By the way, Akhenaten, even though he was kind of a funky-looking dude, was married to Nefertiti, who is supposed to be one of the most beautiful women in the history of the world. So, there you go. It's what DJ Khaled had for his breakfast. Oh, So, on a very real level, I think DJ Khaled is actually a fairly devout Muslim, and I don't think that he drinks a lot. I don't think that he might not even drink at all. I know that he has some dietary restrictions that he follows. I don't know this for certain, by the way. I don't study the eating and drinking habits of rap stars who are most famously known for shouting out their own name. So take all of this with a grain of salt. Please feel free to call me on my bullcrap. Do you want to commute 20 miles through the desert? No. Do you? No, let's go home. Exactly. I thought he started the pouring Ciroc on his cereal fat. He may have. I don't know. I really couldn't tell you. And he might pour it for other people and then not eat it himself. I don't know. No, but now that I think about it, I think there was something on maybe Instagram or something that he posted about that. I don't know. I try to spend my time reading things that are profitable. I don't succeed. I never succeed. but I do try to stay away from the entertainment section of the news feed as much as I can. It was on last week tonight. Oh, okay, well, I guess I just completely missed that one then. All right, so we're going to leave Egypt right there because Akhenaten's rule is from about 1390 to about 1295. So this is going to get us into the period of time where the Bronze Age is on its teetering balance. And after Akhenaten, the Egyptian rulers are going to go a little bit wonky and cause a lot of trouble and make a lot of people really upset and kick over a whole bunch of dominoes that collapse the Mediterranean world. Way to go, Egypt. They're not completely to blame, but they start a lot of this. So, kind of shifting gears a little bit to expand our brains a little bit further towards the Mediterranean world, we do need to talk about a couple of kingdoms that lived over here. Now, the particular areas that we're going to be talking about are this island right here, which is the island of Crete. This big guy right here, one of the larger islands in the Mediterranean. And then a lot of these other smaller islands here in what is the Aegean Sea, part of the Mediterranean Sea. And then this peninsula and landmass over here, which is the modern-day country of Greece, also where ancient Greece is. But at the time, during the Bronze Age, this is where the Mycenaeans live. So one thing to note about both Crete, where the Minoan people lived, and the mainland of Greece, where the Mycenaeans lived, is that these people are sort of on the fringe of the Club of Great Powers. They are definitely going to benefit from the amount of trade that's moving around, and they're also going to benefit from the amount of luxury goods that are available in a lot of the markets. But if we're looking at what we might consider regional impact, so the ability of these areas to sway international outcomes or big battles, they're not going to be what we would call central. There are a couple of references at the very, very end of the Bronze Age where the Mycenaean kings might have been mentioned as one of the big brothers, but it's not completely conclusive. We do know that a lot of people were trading with these people because we've dug up stuff both from the Minoan and Mycenaean world in Egypt and in the old Hittite Empire and in Mitanni and in the Levantine regions. Let me finish this sentence. But they're not going to be a big mover and a shaker, right? So when the Hittites go to war, everybody has to kind of like stop and look to see who they're fighting and make sure that they play the field the right way and align themselves the right way. When the Mycenaeans go to war, they're not going to be given the same level of attention or the same sort of respect. Now, they're going to be powerful in their own right, and they're going to have a lot of regional allies, and they're going to have a lot of impact in the time to come. But they're not fully up to that level of what we're talking about yet. Now, of course, Greece later on goes on to be one of the powerhouses of the ancient world. We're just not there yet. So put a bookmark in that one. Are the Minoans Indo-Europeans? So the Minoans are not fully Indo-European. The Mycenaeans are Indo-Europeans. So let's talk about the Minoans. Again, Minoans are based on this island here of Crete. They are the older of the two cultures. They first start showing up identifiably around 3600 BC. Their Bronze Age starts around 2700 BC, but it's not until about 1900 BC that we start seeing actual, what you would call big kingdoms on the island. And these places that we're going to be talking about are things that you may have heard of sort of peripherally when you talked about stuff in history class. I know at least one of you has heard about these people because one of you was in a history class that I taught. So not everybody had that luxury, that gift, nay, that pleasure. I'm just being a jerk. So where's my notebook? There we are. So the people that we're talking about again are the Minoans. On the island of Crete. Why did that do that? I don't want you to do that. Go back up there. No. There we go. It was a gift and a pleasure. Well, thank you, sir. You are too kind. Mac and I literally went to high school with you, so it really wasn't an option. Yeah, I know. Some of you have just been around me enough that you've heard me ramble. And to you, I do apologize a little bit. You could have just told me to shut up, though. Probably wouldn't have, but, you could have. Anyway, the Minoans were based around this thing that we call a palace culture. And this is where you have one usually really, really big city, and that city's only purpose is to support the government palace that's there. And these big sort of warrior kings are going to run around and beat up a whole bunch of people and fight a whole lot. And they're going to end up developing sort of a pan-Cretan culture that we call the Minoan culture. Really interesting people. Speaking of Mac in a lab coat, he and I were actually on the island of Crete. Last summer, I was trying to see if it was around the same time as we are now, but it's actually a little bit later. End of July, beginning of August. I think it actually was the first week of August. I will tell you this. I've been in deserts. I have been in deserts in Europe. Well, not in Europe. I've been in deserts in Turkey. I've been in deserts in Jordan. I've been in deserts in the United States. I have never in my life been as hot as I was last summer in Crete. It was something like 108 outside with humidity, and the sun, it feels like it's about an inch away from your face. Oh yeah, I should be wearing the hat, but let me pause the hat for when we start showing pictures, and I'll wear the hat while we talk about pictures. So let me get a little bit on with the Minoans instead of digressing and just telling fun stories. So they have big cities, and these cities are like Knossos, Phaistos. I spelled that wrong. Knossos, Phaistos, Malia. Yeah, I should just go ahead and put on the hat. Okay, so again, the adventure hat shows up when I'm talking about places that I've been to and stories that I could tell you come from this actual area that we're talking about. I will say one thing about Knossos while I'm wearing the hat before we switch over to the pictures. Visit Crete. Do not get on the ferry with a car. Accurate. Number 2, if you want to see what a actual Minoan city looked like, don't go to Knossos. Knossos was the sort of capital city. It's where the big kind of central king of the Minoan world lived. If you know anything about the myth of the Minotaur that comes from the Greeks later on, that comes from the sort of ruins of the Palace of Knossos. Knossos is turned into a tourist trap now. They have gone into Knossos and restored a lot of the original buildings to what they think would have looked like at the time, which means that the actual ruins of the site have been built upon by people about a decade ago. It is super loaded with tourists. You can't see anything. And what you can see is sort of a bad recreation. And it costs like €20 to get in, which is about $24, $25. Not worth it. We went there. I'm not sad that I went there because I know that I don't have to go back there. And I know that if I ever took a group of students to Crete, we would not go to Knossos. We would go to other cities. And we went to 5 other cities that I can show you pictures of. And what I want to do first, before we sort of show these individual pictures, I want to show you this stuff from the air. One of the things about some of these, how big is Crete? That's a great question. I can answer that right here. It is about 154 miles wide. Wide, and then about, where's the tallest part? Right about there to right about there. about 37 miles thick at the widest part. It's not too big, but it's big enough for you to have about 9 or 10 really big cities in the ancient world. There we go. All right, so let's zoom in on Phaistos. Get rid of you. One of the great things about these Cretan cities and some of the other Mycenaean cities that we can look at is that when they were abandoned, they didn't get built on top of. One of the things that happens so frequently in the ancient world is these cities are located on specific trade routes on purpose because they're convenient, right? But that means that when one civilization beats up the other civilization and displaces them, they just put their own remnants on top of that city. And what this ends up happening is you can't actually look at the ancient cities without digging through the modern cities to get there. Crete is pretty neat about this stuff. So this is actually the ancient city of Phaistos. And it's pretty close to the exact way that it would have looked when the Minoan people lived there. It's a pretty big site, lots of individual buildings. You have this really cool plaza right here. You've got seating over here, like theater seating. Oh man, I'm sorry, I'm missing stuff. And they don't go darn about their bad restoration. Oh, I think they do. I think they give too much. I took a cruise to the Greek Isles once and it was so hot. Yeah, I'm serious. This is the hottest that I've ever been. Temperature-wise. I think the hottest I've ever been... Oh gosh, you guys don't even want to get into that. I am aggressively okay looking. But how could they build big cities when they're all Cretans? There's a story behind that, and I don't have time to tell you all of it, but I've been to the place where that story originated. So let's look at some photos. But again, this is the actual remnants of the city of Phaistos, and it is a pretty big city. It's like 1/10 of a mile wide. What is that in feet? I wonder if I could do a square. No, I can't do squares. Anyway, it's a pretty big city. It would have had probably around 15,000 to 20,000 people living there. Let's look at photos. That's Akhenaten. So this is that big plaza that I was telling you about. This is a flagstone plaza. It was leveled by hand, and then all of these stones were cut by hand and installed on a flat level. You can see that it was colonnaded along the side here. Would have had lots of nice big columns. There would have been storefronts and temples around the edges of this big platform. Pretty fancy stuff. By the way, this city, infinitely cooler to see than Knossos, and cost €3 to get in. And the only other people that we saw there were a group of people doing archaeological surveys. So there you go. This is what is called the Megaron or Megaron. It would have been part of the king's throne room. So you would have walked into this sort of chambered antechamber right here as a waiting room, and then through this little hallway into the actual throne room on the other side. And this is a kind of a type architectural style thing that you'll see when you're looking at Minoan palaces. They all have these things. This is what's called a Tholos tomb, Tholos. And these are what you would find most of the big Minoan kings buried in. This is at a different place. This is not at Phaistos. This is at a place called Forni. And you see these long, drawn-out, sloping passageways, and then these sort of conical, piled rock structures that make a dome. And then inside of this, you would have had the burial. You can sort of see the crypt in here sticking out from the wall. I don't know if you all can tell that's there from the image or not, but there's a big sort of sarcophagus holder right there. This, of course, would have all been put under dirt, and grass would have grown up on top of it. This is at a place that's called Malia, one of the big cities, probably the second biggest city. This would have been an average-sized house. and the walls here were plastered, and you had these sort of raised areas here on the sides for sleeping or for sort of shelving. And then, of course, this area would have been swept very frequently. The roof would have been wooden timbers. You can sort of see the notches here and here where the wooden timbers would have been put on top of that. And then you would have had a thatch on top of those. The residential part of Malia is actually very well preserved. One of the cooler places that we got to see. And I'll save that. Shouldn't have done that. I'll save that for just a second. So these people, the Minoans, were pretty neat. Their culture is going to go on for a pretty good clip. They pick up a lot of steam. You can tell that they're building a lot of really cool structures, and you see them expanding the amount of land that they have under agricultural purposes. And then about 1700 BC, there's a big earthquake. And we know about this because of regional reports. But this earthquake seems to do a lot of damage to the cities themselves. And what's really unique about this moment is you see earthquakes sometimes hit a civilization like this, and that's kind of the end of them. Like, all of their cities collapse, and then they abandon them because they don't have the manpower to rebuild them. But after the 1700 earthquake, the Minoans completely rebuild all of their big cities and even improve some of the existing structures by reinforcing them and using newer techniques. So this is a sign of a good, sort of healthy, vibrant community. And they're going to be beneficiaries of a lot of this international trade. Again, you're going to see goods from Crete that show up in the Greek mainland. You're going to see them in a lot of the cities along the Levantine coast. You're going to see them in the Hittite world. You're going to see Egyptian stuff show up in Crete, and then Crete stuff in Egypt. And they're benefiting from all of this stuff. And around that time, you're also going to start seeing the use of their writing structure. And the language that they spoke wasn't Greek. It was probably somewhat related to the languages in Anatolia, which would have been the kind of Hittite language group. But we're not 100% certain about all of it because there are two types of writing that they had. One of them was called Linear A, and one of them is called Linear B. And we don't actually know how to read Linear A. And it's just linear, like math linear. Well, let me beat all this stuff. We can read Linear B. It was used a lot also by the Mycenaeans before the advent of the Greek alphabet. And we have lots of examples of it, and I can show you some pictures of Linear B. There aren't a lot of examples of Linear A. And one of the things that you have to have when you're trying to determine how to read a language are usages, right? So if I only gave you one sentence in English and told you decipher the entire language of of English with this one sentence, you couldn't do it. Unless it was like maybe a Nathaniel Hawthorne sentence that had a page long worth of stuff in it, and some old English guy or old American writing in Old English. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. But we don't have a lot of examples of Linear A. One of the best examples that we have actually comes from Phaistos, that place that we were just looking at, the place that's here on the map. But we don't know what Linear A is. We know what it is, but we don't know what it says. But the Cretans, LOL Hawthorne, he's a very long read. He really is. The Minoans are going to get very successful, and they're going to get so successful that they start to colonize. So you actually start seeing cities that are Minoan cities, but they're popping up on other islands around the Mediterranean. And they're going to show up both on these small islands that are sort of nearby Crete, but you're also going to see them on larger islands sort of reaching out in this direction. And this is going to sort of be part of their downfall, because when you're on one big island and everybody sort of knows where you are, but they're not really worried about you getting in their backyard, that's fine. But when you start expanding, then things happen, right? So before we destroy the Minoans, let's talk a little bit more about their culture. They were based around kings. The kings did seem to have some level of religious authority, but a lot of the religious symbolism that we see in the Minoan world comes from religious symbolism of animals. Let me see if I can... Let me see which pictures I pulled. Yeah, we got to talk about their art too. So you're going to see lots of bull imagery and lots of boar imagery. So bulls and pigs, and they're seen as virile and strong animals. The use of the bull imagery is probably going to be part of what starts that whole Minotaur legend. This sort of half bull thing that runs around on this island in the Mediterranean that eats people. Another part of the whole people in Crete eat people is actually going to come from some evidence that we found about, well, lots of human sacrifice. The Minoans appeared to not be very shying away from the human sacrifice, including a big, well, there's a part of the city of Knossos, there's a building that has been excavated that was full of a whole bunch of, well, there's not really any way nice to say this. If you have a squeamish stomach, fair warning, there's a whole bunch of children skeletons. And a lot of these children skeletons not only were pretty clearly killed in sacrificial actions, but they showed signs of butchering, meaning that the flesh was removed from their bones by purposeful design. And there aren't too many reasons why you would be cutting off a dead person's flesh. So the working theory is that either they had some really oddly elaborate sacrificial practices, or that sometimes the Minoans did human sacrifice and cannibalism. Yeah, kind of weird stuff, right? But despite the weirdness of that, they did have quite a successful little civilization. So this is actually linear B tablets. I can zoom in here and give you kind of a better idea of what we're looking at for the writing. You can tell that this doesn't look particularly clear. I mean, it is over 2,000 years old, so give them a little bit of a break. But it at least gives you some nice rules here, and they're writing within the lines. Here's another example where you can see some things that look sort of like symbols here. Common history of human sacrifice and cannibalism is what ties our modern societies together, though hopefully we've all moved past it. Yeah, though I'm friends with a professor that actually has a really interesting theory that modern things like, well, I guess like big sweatshops is actually kind of like a modern day cannibalism, because we're consuming other people's calories. It's a bit involved, so I'm not going to get crazy in there. But so KP says that she can see some Proto-Greek in there. Yeah, you see a couple of symbols that show up in Greek. Like this is maybe a theta, and this is maybe a gamma. So we're on our way to the Greek alphabet. The Greek alphabet, of course, is going to be mostly pilfered from the Phoenicians and then flipped about 90 degrees and then called unique. But, you know, a lot of people steal stuff and flip it and then call it their own. Ask us how we got our numbers. So this is a pretty little scene that has been completely brought from its original location on the island of Crete to the National Museum of Archaeological Artifacts in Athens. It's just lots of A's there. I think we've hit many of the highlights of humanity in this session: incest, human sacrifice, and cannibalism. Yeah, we've hit all the good ones. The Clintons are approving. Oh, deep burn. I feel like as if that was sarcasm. I don't know if it was or not. Anyway, so this is from a a Minoan city called Akrotiri. And this would have been inside of a room in the palace of Akrotiri. And again, let's remember that this style here, by the way, it's called fresco. You put plaster on the wall, and while it's still wet, you go in and you paint on top of it. And when the plaster dries, it hardens with the paint, and you get this really beautiful artwork. And it's pretty detailed. So, like, you can see these neat little birds here and these flower structures, and you have colors and hills and stuff like that. And again, this is almost 4,000 years old. So the Minoans are pretty cool stuff. Of course, this would have been in the palace, like I said, so you're not going to get to see this in a regular everyday house. So the house that I showed you at Malia doesn't have really elaborate frescoes like this. It was just sort of a white plaster wall. But Minoans, cool people. What happens to them? Well, there's another earthquake. And this earthquake hits in about 1450 or so. After that 1450 earthquake, things aren't going so great for the Minoans. They're kind of on the way down. And they don't rebuild after that 1450 earthquake because they don't get an opportunity to. Because right after that earthquake hits, they're going to be invaded by the Mycenaeans. Mycenaeans. And okay, so I hate Microsoft Word for many, many reasons. Mycenaean works. Mycenaeans, no, that's wrong. Anyway, they are invaded by the Mycenaean army. And the Mycenaeans are going to beat the poop out of the Minoans, and the Minoans are going to be forced to sort of run away into their hill fortresses, and only a couple of the fortresses managed to survive. There was only one Mycenaean. You got to hit caps again there, dear. I know that you're not yelling at me, by the way. Your eyes are bleeding. Oh, goodness gracious. Mycenaeans are invading! So, not many of the Minoans are going to be able to survive, and the ones that do are going to slowly but surely intermarry with the Mycenaeans, because the Mycenaeans actually occupy a lot of the larger cities, especially Knossos and Malia. They're on the coastline. Knossos is actually inland. Malia is a port city on the northern shore. Really cool place. Modern city has excellent seafood. Some of the best seafood I've ever had in my life. I should have thrown some of that in there. Yeah. Shane Mack and I laugh at the obtuse autocorrects of our phone and have learned over the years because of the writing stuff like my... Yeah. It just randomly does dumb stuff like this. And if you're friends with me, I am very likely to send you the word Mycenaean. Because they come up a bit. So who are these people? Where do they come from? What do they do? Well, okay, so these are, again, much more Indo-Europeans than the Minoans are. The Minoans are more closely tied to the people that would have been living in the Anatolia region prior to the Indo-European movement. So they're ethnically older and culturally older than the Mycenaeans. Oh, Microsoft, so many things to fix. Just scrap it already. If there were a viable alternative, I'd be all for it. But unfortunately, because of the ubiquitous nature of Microsoft, it's really hard to get away from it. And that was by design. So, there we go. I guess we could all use Linux, right? Some people in the room got really excited when I said everybody use Linux, and I won't call you out. And then he comes back with all caps. Oh, you guys. I wasn't going to out you. But then you just came with it. Oh, guys. You have already made me feel better about my day. Loud noises. Do you really love lamp? Okay, so the Mycenaeans are going to be pretty heavily influenced from the surrounding cultures. All of those big cultures that we've already referenced are going to have a lot of pressures on them. They're going to take a little bit from a lot of these places and sort of mix it up in their own world. Then followed by the rules stating that we need to appreciate each other's viewpoints. I don't think anybody here is being malicious or even abrasive. I think we're all just kind of having a good time. I think so. I feel that. There's a good energy in the room. I don't know if that was actually on purpose caps now or if that was accidental caps. Just leave me in suspense. You're hating against Linux. Let's not hate against operating systems. There are many operating systems out there. All operating systems have good points and bad points. There is no such thing as a perfect operating system. So, okay, let you guys. Okay, so your first big identifiable Mycenaean cities are going to show up around 1600 BC. Name one good point of Microsoft right now. I already have it. It's easily... Okay, we're not going to get off into this. We're not going to. You tried to bait me, Kyle. You tried to bait me. And I could, but I'm not gonna. I mean, I'm not some sort of Microsoft apologist. It's just easier. It really is. It's already there. I don't want to have to code any more than I have to already. So, Mycenae is going to be a city. So there's actually a city called Mycenae. And it was the first really big city of the Mycenaeans to be discovered. So we actually call this whole region, or this whole group of people, the Mycenaeans. But they were not unified. And that's an important thing to remember. The palaces and kings of this period of time were not a unified block of power. The Mycenaeans, as a people group, had dozens of different cities. The city of Mycenae itself, Tiryns, Argos, Athens, Thebes. We mentioned Gla way back in time. Was a big Mycenaean city. They're all going to be independent political units, but they're all going to share sort of a similar substrata of culture. Gla. Relatively resource light, since it was supposed to run on lukewarm phone processors in a state. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the thing about the Mycenaeans is going to be their big building projects, and I'm going to put on the hat again because we're going to go look at some Mycenaean stuff. Because luck would have it that a lot of these cities are also still standing. And you can actually go still see a lot of them. And in fact, Mac in a Lab Coat and I did actually go see a lot of these, including the actual site here of Mycenae itself, which is not as tourist trappy as Knossos, but kind of tourist trappy. It was expensive to get into, but totally worth it. I would go back here. I would bring people back here. I would tell you to go here. Though Tiryns is cheaper, almost as cool, and right down the road. And fewer people there. The biggest problem with Mycenae is the crowd. Everybody goes to Mycenae. But again, you have this really big structure here. You have this giant palatial structure up on top of the hill. You can see here the big sort of forum outside of the palace. You know, and here you have your Megaron, where you have your chambered entrance with lots of... I'm loving the hats, by the way. I'm going to have to throw some hats in there. Boom. By the way, if you are a subscriber, you have access to the Adventure Hat emote. Also, if you'd like to spend some of your adventure points, you can unlock the Adventure Hat emote. There we go. So Mycenae, pretty cool place. Very big, very cool city. And let's look at some pictures. So again, this is Akrotiri. This is a pretty famous piece of historical... I love the random burrito there. A pretty cool piece of historical architecture. This is what's referred to as the Lion Gate. Lion Gate is one of those things that you kind of have to take a picture of. And I got very, very lucky that I only got 2 random people in this photograph. And this was actually my 3rd time through this gate trying to get a picture of it. And I think I had to crop this photo because there's someone standing like right here. But anyway, this is the gateway to the capital city of the Mycenaeans. Now, I did say that the Mycenaeans weren't... Dun, 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 dun. Thank you, Arcadian, for the follow, and welcome to the adventure. Oh, cool, little emotes, too. Greetings. So one thing that you can tell right away is that even though I said these Mycenaean cities aren't unified, Mycenae is going to be what we kind of consider as historians and archaeologists to be... Oh, we got another one. Oh, man. Lee. Panda roll. Holy moly, guys. Gigantic raid. Here, let me click over to streaming here instead of showing photographs. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. For those of you that are just coming in for the raid, first off, Lee, you're an awesome guy. If you are not already following Art of Lee, Lee is a great dude, has a really, really chill stream. Lots of good people in the chat. Dun, 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 dun. Thank you, Gypsy Queen. Oh, I missed somebody else. Who was it that followed prior? I should open the right window. Thank you for the follow, everybody. Love my shirt? Yes, I'm a giant nerd. I love the Ninja Turtles. Grew up on them. I'm wearing the adventure hat for those of you that are new to the channel. When I tell stories about places that I've been to in the ancient world and places that I have seen when they come up in our discussion, I wear the adventure hat. Coincidentally, I was reading Into the Mycenaean Civilization to draw introspection from one of my fantasy worlds. Awesome. Really cool. Shane, history for the win. Everybody history. By the way, Lee, I would definitely give you a shout out. However, my Streamlabs is busted for some reason and my shout out isn't working. So I will just tell everybody, if you're not already following Art of Lee, you should go follow Art of Lee. He has pandas and they dance and they're freaking adorable. And he's a cool guy that does really awesome art. You swear you read the article last night. Yeah, go ahead and throw links. Links are free. Anybody can post links. Lee, if you want to throw links to ArtStation, Instagram, whatever you want to do, man, feel free to dump it all. Feel free to dump it all. There we go. Art of Lee shout out. Awesome stuff. Welcome, everybody. So for those of you that might be new to the channel or just coming in, my name is Shane McInnes. I am a history instructor at a college, so my job is to teach history. And back when all of this weird COVID stuff went down, I figured out pretty quick that I was not going to be able to meet with my students. And I figured that I needed to give them some sort of interaction. So I started streaming Twitch lectures to my students and then liked it so much I figured, hey, somebody else might want to do this too. So here we are. And the goal of this channel is to be super chill, super laid back, but talk about history. Because history is just the story of us. And we are people, and the ancient people were people. And the only thing difference between us and them... Dun, 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 dun. I love the little whip gif, by the way. One of my favorites. I had a student in my class that was in the chat earlier. I don't know if he's still around or not. But I really do think that history doesn't have to be boring. It can be fun. It can be goofy. We can make bad puns. The title of all of my channels are song puns or pop cultural puns. So Frankie says Wanax. And for those of you that don't know, who might just be coming in or don't know very much about Mycenaean history, Wanax is the Mycenaean word for king. And this, of course, is a very famous pun on the Frankie Goes to Hollywood song, Relax. Stick in. Yeah, dude, I am not an artist. I am not an artist at all. My wife, awesome artist. Me, garbage artist. Take me back to 4th grade, which is the last time I enjoyed a history class. My teacher had tons of jokes. You have come to the right location, my friend. I am about as goofy as they get. But I really do love history, too. So what we're looking at here is the actual city of Mycenae. And if you look at this picture down here, this is the program Google Earth. For those of you that don't know Google Earth, it's a free program that basically mushes together all of the satellite data that Google collects on us and mushes it into one humongous globe. And you can actually zoom in on anywhere you want to in the world. And I use it a lot when I teach because it's hard to find maps sometimes that show exactly what I want to do. So we're talking about Greece. Boom, there's Greece. Boom, I can zoom into Mycenae and we can actually look at it. The photos I was showing are actually from Mycenae from when I was there last summer with my friend Mac in the lab coat, one of the awesome mods here. Studied architecture. My anthropology class was fun. I love me some anthropology. I also love Indiana Jones, by the way. I'm just a giant nerd in general, if you can't figure it out by the fact that I have a Stormtrooper Mr. Potato Head, and then I've got a Gundam model right here, and this is Optimus Prime, and this is a Darth Tater. Oh, by the way, this painting back here behind me is the Riddler that my wife did for me. Riddler's my favorite Batman villain, by the way. I gotta move this way. This is Heavy Arms Custom Gundam model. This is Galvatron. Nerdy is the new sexy, that's right. You have a Captain Kirk Potato Head, awesome. I won't ask you Kirk or Picard, but is Batman your favorite hero? No, not even kinda. Can we get a close-up of Darth Tater? That would require me to get up and move around, and I don't know if you guys want to see that. You on 2 Zaku 2s? I love Gundams. Love Gundam stuff. Heresy. Picard for sure. Oh, man. So, welcome, guys. He doesn't have pants on. I'm wearing gym shorts. I'll be 100%. Okay, fine. If you guys really want to see that stuff. By the way, it's 90-something degrees in Mississippi. There's Darth Tater. He has a lightsaber. He's got a great little cape. Darth Tater. Yeah, I love it. I'm going to get Twitch banned. Yeah, I know. I wonder... Okay, we're not going to go there. What's silver's precious? I could do a really good Gollum, by the way. Guard him! Yeah, I know that's kind of creepy. Yeah, I know. I'm weird. I actually did a lot of theater, by the way, for those of you that don't know. Stories about Shane in the past. I was very briefly a theater major. I did a lot of stage production stuff when I was younger. I really enjoyed doing accents. Yeah, I know, theater, yeah. And I changed because I realized that I would probably not be able to get a job that would support myself or my family, so, yeah. Okay, Lee, give me a sentence to say in Gollum, and I'll say something in Gollum. Since we're constantly making you speak in Mandarin. You don't know what to do.
Are pandas tasty? Are they crunchable? Are they real?
Oh man, good times. You never realized you needed that. Oh man. I love you all. You all are super awesome. You have made my day better. I tip my cap to you all. Theater nerd as a history teacher. I see the possibilities. And okay, so for really, like, on an honest, history is just a story, right? And the people that are in history do stuff just like we do stuff. And they act a lot of the same ways that we do. And, I mean, everybody just wants kind of the same thing. They want to go to bed and be safe. They want to feed their kids. They want to have a good job. They want to do work that's fulfilling. And that's just kind of human nature, right? So when we're talking about Gollum is coming for the pandas. So when we're talking about history, all we're doing is trying to find emotional connections between us and the people in the past. So when I'm teaching, it is a lot like theater because I'm trying to get people to have an emotional reaction with me so that they have an emotional reaction with the people, right? Awesome. That's going to be like #1 clip from the entire channel ever. All right. Feel free to ask questions, bring up comments, make dad jokes, throw some puns at me, do whatever you need to do. I'm going to sort of pick back up with a little bit of history, and we can talk about a little bit more about the Mycenaeans. So what I was doing is I was actually showing pictures from Mycenae, which is the biggest city of the Mycenaean culture. And I was showing this picture right here, which is what's called the Lion Gate. All of these stones that you see right here are actually monoliths. This guy right here is humongous. Like, we're talking multiple tons worth of rock. This is all carved out with the cool lions right here. You see these big, giant walls. These are what were referred to in history as Cyclopean walls. All right, Millie Mappa. Have a good night. Blissful rest to you. And see you next time. So here's another picture of these big walls that we're talking about. And again, remember, this is being done... Bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. So let's remember, too, that this is all being done by hand. These people don't have, backhoes. Hotshot brother, thank you for the follow. We're cutting all of this stuff with bronze tools. The hardest metal that they had at the time was bronze. And they're doing this by hand. They're bringing a lot of these rocks from down the side of this mountain and having to lug all of these things up here. These walls themselves are almost 22, 23 feet tall. And they go all the way around the city. So if we zoom back in to the city... Yeah, aliens. Totally aliens. Let me see what... so here's a... went too far. These are the walls of another city of the Mycenaean culture. It's a city called Tiryns. It's actually only about 30 minutes by car away from the capital city. But again, you can see these just gigantic walls. And this is particularly remarkable because why else do you need walls? I mean, if you're not fighting with people, right? So You don't build walls just for fun. You build walls because you are warlike and you got to keep the bad guys out, right? And the Mycenaeans are warlike people. They're big on fighting. Of course, if you go later on in history and you're looking at the Greek people, they have a whole bunch of stories written by this guy named Homer, who was a poet who collected a whole bunch of stories that we call today the Iliad and the Odyssey. All of those stories about Agamemnon and Odysseus and Achilles, those stories are actually talking about the Mycenaean people, right? That guy named Homer, not like Doe, but like Homer the blind poet guy from Athens. And these big cities had thousands of people, but of course the story that a lot of them are most famous for, the Iliad, is a story about a gigantic war that they had. So war is kind of what defines a lot of these people, and if you go dig up a lot of their stuff, lots of warrior burials where you see people buried with their armor and with their helmets and with their weapons, because that's kind of what they looked at. So I don't know if anybody's ever read the Iliad or the Odyssey or seen the questionably decent movie of Troy with Brad Pitt. It was okay. I mean, the cinematography was really pretty, and they filmed a lot of the stuff on site, so props for that. But he's a really, really pretty guy to have lived back then. Like, when you see all these people that have straight teeth and, like, nice hair, and they've, pretty clearly had a bath in the last month, not so great for the ancient world depiction there, right? I know it's just been a long time since Homer has needed any introduction, since a lot of people my age heard of him. Yeah, again, so... But the stories that Homer are telling about, these great battles between King Priam of Troy and the fearful Prince Paris who stolen away Helen and dragged her across to be ravished by the Trojans, and the unification of Agamemnon, who calls all of his brothers together and goes, "We got to go get that woman back." All right? I wish you were my history teacher growing up. I mean, that means a lot, man. That really does. This is what history can be, right? You bought those books for posterity but haven't gotten through with all of them. That's okay. You don't have to read all of them. You can just read them in a little bit. You prefer the Odyssey? Odyssey's good too. What grade do I teach? I teach college. I teach World Civ 1 and 2 right now. In the past, I've taught Roman history, Greek history. I've taught classes on Asian history, U.S. history. I've taught a whole bunch of stuff. I've taught prior before that in high school, and I taught creative writing and English and computer class, and I've taught a whole bunch of stuff. And Spanish. Fui enseñando de español para 4 años. Sí, 4 años. Pero hace... it's been a long time since I've taught Spanish. Anyway. So inside the Mycenaean world, you have all these stories of great heroes, but my heart is locked in history. It really is. Spanish with Shane was the best. Yeah, you did have me for Spanish 2, didn't you? Did you have me for Spanish 1 and 2, or just Spanish 2? I think you had me for 1 and 2, right? I can't remember. One of the things that I would do in Spanish 1 and 2, just to kind of throw you some more little things that Shane did, I would write these really horrible stories about all of these dysfunctional people and translate them into Spanish and then read them out for the students to write down in English. And it would be like Jerry Springer stories like, "My name is Bubba and I have 4 wives and only 2 of them know about each other and I've got 8 kids." And I mean, if you're going to have to listen to something, nobody necessarily wants to hear like, "Hello, my name is Shane. I live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I am 14 years old. I go to school. I play the guitar." Right? You got to give them some pepper, some spice. Okay, so unfortunately for the rest of the people in the Mycenaean world, they're actually going to be on the lower class. The warriors got to be the big fancy guys because you won your glory through battle. The big fancy people could also buy and afford the really cool weapons like chariots and armor made out of bronze and stuff like that. Most of the people in the Mycenaean world were just podunk old farmer dudes that got called into all this battle and died for the rich people. The Minoans, again, are going to be conquered by the Mycenaeans about 1450 BC. The Mycenaeans are going to steal a couple of their cities and start living there. But again, what we're talking about is this height of the Bronze Age, and the Mycenaeans are actually going to start getting a little bit big for their britches. And we've talked in the past about all these other big Bronze Age empires like the Hittites and the Mitanni. So the Hittites are over here in Turkey, and the ancient word for this region is Anatolia. You may have heard that before. The Hittites had a really big empire over here, and the Mycenaeans, being kind of just across this little stretch here, are going to start kind of poking at the Hittites a little bit. And this is not going to be great for the Mycenaeans because the Hittites are going to respond and beat the junk out of them. Now, that's not the best, right? You don't want to pick a fight with a big dog and then lose because that kind of makes you look even worse. And there's going to be some evidence that the Mycenaeans actually poke a little bit more at the Hittites through some of the other Hittite rival states, right? So there are a lot of these little kingdoms on the border between the Mycenaean world and the Hittite world. And there are some little kingdoms in there like Phrygia and Arzawa and Gordian and all these cool little cities that you can still go see a lot of these, by the way, if you want to go to Turkey. And the kings of the Mycenaeans are going to start trying to get involved in a lot of these politics. So you can tell that they're trying to move up in the world. They're really trying to be one of these big powers. And they're never really going to get there. They're going to get kind of successful. And they do make a name for themselves, right? Because for a very long time, everybody thought that the story of the Trojan War was just in the Iliad, right? It's just a story. It was just made up. Nobody really cares. But there's actually this German archaeologist guy named Heinrich Schliemann. Nope. Am I saying that right? Schliemann? Or is it Schulman? Schliemann. I think it's Schliemann. Yeah. Heinrich Schliemann. Better than picking a fight with a small dog and still losing. Yeah, I guess. You don't want to fight with anybody and lose, really, though, right? I like winning. I like my ancient civilizations as winners. You don't want to go to Turkey right now, but maybe eventually it won't be a war zone. The region that I'm talking about is safe. It's south of Istanbul. It is west of the capital city. It doesn't have a lot of Kurdish population, and it's full of basically a whole bunch of Russian tourists. Good sir, lovely to hear you talk. Your delivery is crisp and engaging. I sadly must tear myself away for some food and such. You go get your nummies, man. You go get them. Thanks, Lee, again for the raid. Much love. I heart the pandas. Hopefully I didn't scar you with the golem eating pandas. I'm trying to think of a good send-off.
Go away, but please come back.
All right, guys. Nightly. Keeping that golem panda clip. Yep. So, anyway, Mycenaeans, they're moving up in the world. They're going to get big. They start playing around with international politics. They hit right at that magical sweet spot right around the 1400 to 1200 world where everything is super cool in the Bronze Age. And then we'll come back to them because next week, again, it all goes downhill. So let's talk a little bit about their government and their religion, and then we'll kind of wrap up for the night. Again, the Mycenaeans are not unified. They have a lot of different kings. Each one of these cities has its own king. They're not always going to be friends. They fight with each other a lot. They do have sort of a similar system of ruling, though. You can see a lot of similar architectural styles. A lot of their weapons are very, very similar. What I'm trying to say is when you dig up a Mycenaean city, you can go, this is Mycenaean. But it's not something like they had one big country where they were all acting in unison. Inside their religion, it's pretty clear that they had a lot of the same gods that you might see pop up later on in the Greek world. We see Poseidon mentioned. We see Zeus mentioned, but he's actually, at the Mycenaean time, not considered the king of the gods. We see people like Athena mentioned. So you get these references of what you might call the big Greek gods later on. But there's not a lot of description as to what they stand for. Like, we see Zeus, but we don't know if he's kind of the thunder god that he is later on, or if he's just a dude. And when we see Athena, she's actually just referred to as a mistress, or like Miss Athena. And she's sort of the handmaiden of the gods, but we don't know if that means that she's like serving people with wisdom or what. There's not a lot of real big explanation for a lot of the Mycenaean interpretations for their religion. But one thing that's kind of neat about them is we can pretty clearly tell that inside of the way that their government operated, you can see both men and women acting as important leaders. So you have a set of priests and you have a set of priestesses, and it looks like they were pretty on the level, at least in the religious aspect. So that's something that you don't necessarily see a whole lot of. Usually, if you have sort of priests in control, there's going to be a high priest that's sort of over everything, or kind of the priest that's the priest of the head god, and that's the dude that sort of leads the religion. And you might have some women that are really important to a certain goddess or a certain temple, but you don't necessarily see women and men participating religiously on the same level in a lot of ancient cultures. So there's something kind of neat about the Mycenaeans. And we do, again, kind of have evidence of that good old-fashioned human sacrifice. If you have read the Iliad, you'll know that prior to going off to war with the Trojans, King Agamemnon gets a lot of his guys together and his brothers, and he sacrifices his daughter for favorable winds at a place called Aulis. I almost went to Aulis when we were in the Greek world in Greece. You can still go see it today. But having looked at it on Google Earth and consulting with some other friends, the temple itself is really grown up and you can't really see anything. So instead, we went to another really cool place called Sunion, which was wicked cool. But that's much later in the classical Greek period of time, not necessarily where we would stay tonight. But to wrap up, I did want to show a couple more pictures, or at least one more picture. So again, these are the walls of Tiryns, and then you have this guy. This is a pretty famous archaeological relic. This was actually excavated from the city of Mycenae in a big pit tomb, and this is referred to as the Mask of Agamemnon. Now, was this Agamemnon? We probably can't say. Was it a dude rich enough to have a golden mask buried with him? Yeah, clearly. But was this the King Agamemnon? We don't know. But it's called the Mask of Agamemnon, and it's one of the coolest and most widely recognizable archaeological relics in all of Greece. So you gotta show a picture of it, right? This, by the way, is another relic in the National Archaeological Artifact Museum in Athens. Very great museum, very well designed, and not too expensive, and not so crowded. Had a great time there. Spent most of a day there. Really, really cool stuff. Lots of cool stuff. I could spend another day there and probably get a little bit more out of it. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of what I have to say for the night. However, if you have any questions about the stuff that we just did, if you want to see another picture of something or get me to recover something, how many points do I have to save up to go to a museum with you someday? Now, I know that you might be asking that in jest, but I've actually considered this, and I've given a lot of thought of this stuff. For a little while, I was considering running a Patreon page, and one of the Patreon levels would have actually been, theoretically, go on an adventure with me. So, I know you might halfway be joking, but I'm kind of not. I think it would be really awesome to go on a trip with some people that would really seriously be interested in learning about some history. I really enjoy this stuff. I can have Shane adventure, maybe so. If you're serious about that, And if you are, well, I mean, okay, so let me pause before we get really far out of hand. Ain't nobody doing nothing till we get a handle on this COVID garbage, right? I think we're all aware of that being a serious problem with travel right now. I do not want to get into a foreign country and then some travel restriction get put in place and us get stuck somewhere. Ain't nobody want none of that. But if you are serious about that and you don't mind, shoot me a whisper or send me an email, maybe with a list of places that you would be interested in seeing. I am not joking when I say I would love to take a trip with some people. I really, really would. Yep. So it's out there. That is an option. I don't know how many channel points that would be, though. Flint, Michigan. If I were to be stuck in a country with someone, you'd be on the list. I mean, it's a real thing. Flint's not so bad. I've got other friends in Flint. Okay. So, once again, if you would like to, remember that below your chat window, which is over here, you have adventure points. And if you would like, you can spend some of those points now. And make me do some weird stuff, like spit out a random world capital, or random history fact, or you can summon the adventure hat and I'll tell you a fun little story of things that I've done, or you can let slip the puppy of war. Arcadian, do you have a request? Got any sort of random history fact about blood? Or thing? I need to make that little blank required. And Daria summons the adventure hat. So let me get maybe some guidance on Arcadian here. About the Minoans. Random history fact about the Minoans. So they had this weird ritual that we see show up in their fresco art, where apparently they let a bull go in a ring, and the young men of the village would run up and try to jump over the bull. And there are a few different ways that we tried to interpret this. One of them is this was a sign of your manhood, right? Like, I'm going to go jump over that bull. And other people take this as some sort of quasi-religious structure where you were pitting your spirit against the animal spirit and gaining some of that spirit with it. But one of the fun things that you see in some of the frescoes are people kind of cartwheeling over the top of these really big bulls. I can give random history facts about blood. Okay, so the adventure hat has been summoned. Daria, do you have any sort of story that you would like to hear? Any guidance on that, or you just want me to tell something fun, or... I have so many good stories. And I'm a storyteller. For the record, Shane has jumped over an active bonfire. Multiple times. Dealer choice. Okay. Let's do one about Greece, since we're talking about Greece, the Cretans and the Minoans and the people. Okay, so here's where we go. Earlier in the episode, and I'll actually flip back to these images. Missed it. This guy. All right, so again, this is a Tholos tomb. And I'll put the word here for people that might be interested. It's Tholos. And this is at a place called Forney. So, if we go back in time, and by the way, I was at this location last summer. I wasn't supposed to be at this location, but suffice to say it was on top of a mountain and nobody else was there, and I just jumped the fence because I wanted to see this stuff. So there is a story in the ancient world where the people of Crete were trying to make some insinuating, I guess, pokes at the people of Greece, and they said, hey man, you know that god Zeus that you guys have? We've got his tomb. So basically, the people on Crete are saying Zeus is dead. And they're like, yeah, we got his tomb. And this actual picture is the tomb that the Cretans were claiming was the tomb of Zeus. Now, if we fast forward to the biblical period of time, the Apostle Paul writes in a letter that it's well known that the Cretans are liars. And what he's referring to is this, because the Cretans were yelling around that they had Zeus's tomb. Now, of course, Paul, who was proclaiming Christianity as religion, was trying to say that, Zeus doesn't exist in the first place, but he was playing on the concept that people in the ancient world already knew about that story, and that they already knew that Cretans were liars, which is why the English word cretin comes from Cretan. So there you go. Bloop. Fun little story. There's a fun little thing. Admitting to a B&E on a recorded enter message. It was not breaking and entering. There were other people over there too. So it's not like I'm in trouble or anything. So there you go. I hope that was a fun little story for you. Place that I've been, place that you can see. Pretty cool stuff. All right, ladies and gents. Any other requests? Another random history fact. Give me something. Just random? I really need to make that blank required so that people give me some guidance. Like, random history fact in my brain is just is Scotland. Random history fact about Scotland. And then another one. Okay, so dinosaur history. Oh, I could do that too. Ooh, I got a good one for dinosaur history. I feel like I needed to say something. Oh, okay, so here's a random history fact about Scotland. Well, how about this? It's a random history fact wrapped in a conspiracy theory, so this is an even more fun one. There is a guy who for a time was the Scottish sort of head archaeologist, and he's published a whole bunch of kind of questionable books, and I don't necessarily want to give his name because I think he's kind of a bit askew with his interpretations. But he's one of the quasi-authorities that started pushing the concept of Mary Magdalene having lots of children with Jesus. And according to his interpretation of the bloodline of Mary Magdalene, the Stuart family, who were, from Scotland that took over as kings of England, were related to Jesus. So they were literally the royal house. And the evil Puritans under the movement that run them out in the the war between the Parliament and the Stuarts were so angry because they knew about it and they were trying to establish Protestantism over the legitimate line of God. No, it's not Dan Brown. The name is Lawrence, but that's here and there. So there's a random Scottish history fact. Of course, the Stuart family did come from Scotland, and they did rule England for quite some time. And they got run out because they were very, very poor managers of money. I doubt that it had anything to do with the bloodline of Jesus. Okay, so dinosaur history fact. I could give you the spill from the beginning of Jurassic Park where he's talking about the raptor claw, but I won't do that. Dinosaur history. So I don't know if any of you all saw about the end of last year, there was news out of, I believe, Canada, that they had located a really, really well-preserved ankylosaur. And it had most of the shell and the armor spikes along the side and the big club tail. But they've actually been able to do a lot of examination on that particular fossil and have gotten down into its stomach. And are trying to currently piece together what this dinosaur's food would have been. And Ankylosaur? I'm glad you got it. I was trying to find some way to pun that in. Anyway, so there is work being done right now by some paleontologists on the contents of a fossilized ankylosaur's gut. And they're publishing some really interesting stuff, so go Google that if you want to learn more about it. All right. There's a good energy in the room. Anybody have anything else before I wrap us up? Alrighty. So thank you all for the raids and the follows and the likes and all of the cool stuff. Any work on the random fact randomizer? Actually, yes. My wife, who is much smarter than I am, came up with a pretty great idea, and we're kind of working on that. Well, actually, she's working on it. I just said it was a great idea. I probably should help her with that. She's very, very kind, my wife. First off, she manages me, which is, as you might expect, a bit of a handful. But also does really thoughtful things like that. So, all right. So let me remind everybody of a few things. Number one, we will be having a special viewer request episode next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we will be talking about leprosy in the ancient world. And you might be excited to hear, I have lined up a special guest. I will not describe who this special guest is, but suffice to say, this is an interesting person that's going to be able to give us a little bit more information on leprosy specifically. And then I'll sort of fill in a historical timeline of really big leprosy outbreaks that we have discovered through time. Oh, dang it, Brittany. You're not supposed to ruin it. No, this person does not have leprosy. My wife, who is a very skilled molecular biologist and has taken lots of classes in microbiology and virology, is going to come on and tell us a lot about the actual bacteria that causes leprosy and how it works and how all that stuff happens. So you'll get to see my beautiful wife, my better 3/4. So there's that. Next Thursday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, we will pick up with the Adventures in History, and we will cover the collapse of the Bronze Age. All of the cool stuff that we've been talking about is going to go away. Where do I get your email, by the way, to discuss that adventure idea? Right, Shonda. Email address, mckinnistravels@gmail, or the link that KP just posted there. Thank you very much, KP. Don't worry about it. And then the next Tuesday, because we had a request from my lovely wife, who was celebrating her birthday last Tuesday. The following Tuesday, so not next Tuesday, but the next one, we're going to have another viewer request episode. Usually we take every other week off, but we're going to do 3 of them in a row. And we're talking a little bit about the topic. Originally it was the Khmer Kingdom, but she might be changing her mind. We'll see. We will see. All right, ladies and gents. If there are no more requests, let us look to see if we can raid someone. We have 2 options right now. We have Steve Sketches, who appears to be drawing something Mandalorian related. And we have Cave Geek Art, who is once again working on his Breath of the Wild map. The map itself is finished. He's trying to create a digital composite out of a whole bunch of pictures. So, what say ye, crowd? Steve Sketches or Cave Geek? We did raid Cave Geek last time. Let me just decide and say we'll raid Steve. So, if you have them, please ready the adventure hat. Let us yell adventure and then throw lots of hats into the stream. Thank you all again. Thank you for the sub, Jim Bob 422. I appreciate your support. Thank you to everybody who followed. Shooting you an email now. Awesome sauce. And until next Tuesday, I will see you all. I hope you have a great weekend. Hope everything's going great. I'm going to click this button to start the raid. Then I'm going to flash up the outro screen for just a second. And then we will head on into the night. Thank you all very, very much. Have a great one. And I realize that you can still see me now, and that's kind of odd, so let me throw this outro screen up. See y'all.